Welcome back to New Perspective. I hope that you've been gaining a new perspective of what it's like to live more like Jesus throughout this series. We started this series with a path where we gave our lives to God and continued to discover following God's will for our lives. And then last week, we discussed what it is like to follow the path and continue as a disciple of Jesus. As a disciple, we heard about two important disciplines. The first one was spending time with God, and the second was sharing God with others. Today, we're going to focus on this one thing. My new perspective is to live in accountability. Being accountable means the obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or account for your actions. We must live responsibly and obediently daily, moment by moment, keeping our eyes ahead and keeping our focus on Jesus. How do we live in accountability and how do we focus on Jesus? Hebrews 12:2 says this: "We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith." This is very important to be accountable, and it is the key to living successfully in the purpose and the plan that God has for your life. Accountability helps us stay on track and make the right decisions. As we're living His plan for our lives, we are not only loving God, but loving others. Accountability is a safeguard in our relationships. Accountability leads us to dependence on God, on His strength and His power and His purpose in our lives. Let's look at our series memory verse found in 1 John 2:6. Those who say they live in God should live their lives as Jesus did. To live in accountability, we have to let Jesus lead our lives. Hebrews 4:13 shows that our accountability is with God first and foremost. Nothing in all of creation is hidden from God. Everything is naked and exposed before His eyes, and He is the one to whom we are accountable. God sees and knows everything. And the good news is that with all of our shortcomings, we live in grace and forgiveness through Jesus. Nothing can be hidden from God. He sees what we do and He knows what we think, and yet He still loves us so much. In Luke 19, Jesus had an encounter with a man named Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a man who was not very popular and was disliked by many. And despite being a cheater and making himself rich, Jesus showed love to Zacchaeus. In Jesus' encounter with him, his life was transformed because of his willingness to walk in accountability, not only with Jesus, but with others. He obeyed Jesus right away, and then he began living in accountability with others as a result. And we can do the same by living in accountability. When we are accountable to someone, we are more likely to stay on track and make the right decisions. This is especially important when it comes to our faith. We need to be constantly seeking Jesus and putting Him first in our lives. And when we do this, we will be able to see Him for who He truly is. So I want us to read this account of Zacchaeus in Luke chapter 19, verses 1-3. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a closer look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. What does it look like to live practically in accountability? Our first point we see in that verse is look for Jesus. Accountability starts first and foremost with us walking in accountability with Jesus and then with others. So we have to look for Jesus in our lives. And then that might mean starting your relationship with Him for the first time today. Or maybe it means rededicating and committing yourself to Him. We have to seek out Jesus to allow Him to change our hearts and our minds. And then we can truly live in accountability. Zacchaeus tried to get a good look at Jesus, but he couldn't because of the size of the crowd. But he was determined. We have to get determined in our lives to get a good look at Jesus, just like Zacchaeus did in Luke chapter 19, verses 4-5. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. "Quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today." Notice that Zacchaeus did not allow his shortcomings to be an excuse to keep him from seeing Jesus. Get a good look at Jesus and let Him transform you, and then you will live in the fulfillment of the life that He's created for you to live. Jesus sought out Zacchaeus by telling him that he was going to his house. He began investing in Zacchaeus' life immediately. And Jesus sees you and wants to invest in your life. So look for him. So number 1, look for Jesus. Number 2, set your priorities right. Not only did Zacchaeus respond quickly to following Jesus, but he responds quickly to getting his priorities aligned with Jesus. Listen as we hear how Zacchaeus changed his life. I will give half of my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I have cheated people, I will give them back 4 times as much. Salvation has come to this home today, for the Son of Man has come to seek and to save those who are lost. Luke 19, verses 8 through 10. We don't always make the best decisions, so we have to align our priorities with Jesus. We have to ask God to help us to see the actions that we make from his perspective so that we can live more and more like him. Think about your priorities. Where are you not living or aligned with the priorities of Jesus? In your relationships or your attitudes with family, at school, or at church? Are you being accountable for your actions and thoughts and making sure that they align with God? Remember, my new perspective is to live in accountability. My perspective is changed when I follow Jesus and allow him and his Spirit living in me to transform me. Many times we see in the Bible that accountability is important to fulfill God's purpose in our lives and live according to his word. Romans 14:2 says this, "Yes, each of us will give a personal account to God." That means that God is the first that we need to be accountable to. Just as Zacchaeus joined in Jesus' mission, you and I can too. This ties into last week as we talked about living as a disciple. By living as a disciple and making other disciples, we are living out what Jesus has for us to do. By being accountable, responsible, and obedient, we are living as a follower of Jesus and remaining connected through a healthy relationship with Jesus. Jesus said, "Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need." Matthew 6:33. Like Zacchaeus, get a good look at Jesus. Quickly respond to him. Make Jesus the leader of your life today and align your priorities with him and his word. So here's your challenge for this week. Pick one of the points from today and focus on putting it into practice.